All right. Hello, everybody. It's so good to be back. I'm happy to see you all today. And yes, I'll be talking on the 4 Bodhisattva vows that we recite during each meeting. And so before I do that, I wanted to have a little bit of a prelude or a preamble. So the schedule for today's talk will be a preamble or a prelude, and then we'll do a interlude. I don't really know if that's the correct term, but we'll do a break, an intermission, where we'll break into groups and then discuss these things. And then we'll come back together, put it back together, and then I'll end with some reflections on the 4 Bodhisattva vows. So I wanted to start by kind of distinguishing between the definition of a vow and an oath, like kind of stating the difference between those two things. So according to the dictionary, an oath is a solemn promise, often invoking a divine witness regarding one's future action or behavior. So taking an oath of allegiance, or like the oath of honesty, where you put your hand on the Bible or something at a court gathering. You're doing an oath showing that you're doing a specific thing. And so I think an oath normally is related to invoking a divine witness, or saying like, I swear this on blank, I swear this on my mother's grave, or I swear this on my life, or I swear to you based on something. So an oath is more about swearing something based on something. You're swearing on something. And so conversely, a vow is just a solemn promise, or a promise to do a specified thing. So it's not exactly that you're swearing on something. It's just a promise to do something, or an intention to do something. So when we talk about the Bodhisattva vows, it's a promise or an intention to do something, and we're going to try our best to do that thing when we recite the vow. But we may not always make it there, but we do our best to try to achieve whatever it is we're saying to achieve. Secondly, I wanted to redefine Bodhisattva. So my last talk was about the path of the Bodhisattva and what that means. So the word Bodhi is close to the word Buddha, which means awakened. And then Sattva means being or mind. So Bodhisattva is like a being who is awakened, or a being who is dedicated to the path of awakening, and sharing that path of awakening with all beings. And so third, we'll go into the Bodhisattva vow. According to Wikipedia, this is the definition. The Bodhisattva vow is a vow, or an aspiration, or a resolution taken by some Buddhists to achieve full Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So we may say, why do we practice meditation? Well, maybe some of us say, I want to relieve my anxiety, or I want to live with more clarity, or I want to live with more purpose or intention. And when we do the Bodhisattva vow, we can see that the real purpose of our practice, the real purpose of practicing mindfulness, of walking this path of the Buddha, is to achieve full Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, of all beings in the universe. That's fellow humans, fellow loved ones, our enemies in our lives. That's the cows, the chickens, the bacteria, even the minerals, the rocks, the trees. We're walking this path to benefit all sentient beings, all beings in the universe. And so Wikipedia continues, this can be done by venerating all Buddhas and by cultivating supreme moral and spiritual perfection to be placed in the service of others, in particular Bodhisattvas promised to practice the 6 paramitas. So I don't want to share what those are exactly, because we're going to do a discussion activity where we'll generate kind of some of our own ideas about this practice and this path. because you all also have the Buddha nature, and I'm curious what you have to say beyond Wikipedia. And then one point I wanted to make, again, before we break up into groups, is that this is something that we recite every week, or every time you come, we recite this thing. And I know that there's a tendency in the human mind that when something is regular, when we recite it regularly, sometimes we just forget the meaning of it, or we forget the depth of it, and we can tend to just kind of pass through it really rapidly without really thinking about what it means, without really seeing it with fresh eyes, and it becomes this kind of archaic thing that's not really living, that we're not really engaged with. A number of years ago, I went to a religious service, and it struck me during the service that there were a lot of points where people continued to repeat something, and it struck me towards the end of the service that everyone there was kind of repeating these phrases as fast as they could so that they could then get out of the service and probably go to Waffle House or something for brunch. So we want to make sure that when we're reciting a phrase, we're really with it. We're seeing it almost as if for the first time, and we are fully aware of what we're reciting and the meaning of it. We don't want to recite it with the intention of getting out of there quickly. We want to really be aware of what we're saying, what we're aspiring to do, because a vow or a promise is a pretty serious thing. So we want to be intentional about when we say it, how we do it, and how we incorporate it into our lives as well. So that is the first stage. I talked about what it means to, what a vow is. I talked about what a bodhisattva is, and what specifically the bodhisattva vow is. And then we can look at it in our pamphlets right here. We can see that it's countless beings we vow to free, ceaseless afflictions we vow to end, limitless truth doors we vow to open, the deepest paths of awakening we vow to realize. So we look at that freshly, and we're going to do a discussion to bring out some of those gems, some of those insights. Cornell, when he's facilitating, often asks in the very beginning, who's here for the first time? So if you're here for the first time, raise your hand. And when we practice the way of awakening, really each moment is fresh and each moment is new. So in reality, all of us that are here for the first time. This day has never occurred before. This moment has never occurred before. So when we read these vows, we're reading them almost as if for the first time. So what I want to do next is break up into 4 groups. So you all can do that. I can see you all in the room a little bit. Actually, I'm pinned to this, so I can't really. But if you could break up into 4 groups, and what we're going to do is each group is going to have one of the vows to discuss. And what I want you all to do is just kind of discuss what it means for a little bit, and then discuss 2 practical ways that we can integrate this into our life. So we talked about ceaseless afflictions, countless beings. What does all that mean? Like, what are some practical ways that we can integrate this vow or this intention into our life? So break into groups, discuss it, discuss 2 intentions, and then discuss like 1 attitude or state of mind that might be helpful when we're undertaking to do this vow. Okay, so 2 practical steps, 1 state of mind. Then we're going to come together and share on a big screen, which Jake has prepared for me. And so break up into groups, 4 groups, and then assign yourselves the 4 vows in those 4 groups, and then we can come back together and share those points afterwards. Does anyone have any questions about that before we get started?
Are we clear on this? You can ask a question.
Do you want to assign
What-
vows?
Yeah, I'll do that. Why don't we break up into roughly 5 people? So that'll give us 4 groups of 5 people. First vow, second vow, third vow, fourth vow. So countless beings, ceaseless afflictions, limitless truth doors, and deepest paths. Simple.
Okay.
If you have any questions, just raise your hand.
So then you might need a scribe to write it down, but you're coming up with 2 practical steps and then 1 attitude for each vow for the vow that you're talking about. And the people on Zoom, we can type in the chat if you want. Sorry.
Think how much time you're gonna give this? 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So how can we apply that in our life? You know,
close-mindedness was the way and I like that. I was thinking like, be honest all the time. Really not that way or not to go. Go wrong. Kind of what you're saying is like the frame of mind is like, you know, as much as we strive to be honest. I think that we don't have to. So we're trying to communicate our own truth. Don't really
change.
maybe it's
Things that kind of get talked through over time.
As far as we know, the age line is learning new ways to think, new ways.
every week, and I know I feel never you know, it's a so the only that time you know, the time that I go.
No.
Right. I would call it everything. It is hard, yeah. If you vote in angle. Yeah. But it wrote it down. That's what I wrote it.
We want to do it.
What was
Go to that room and-
second question?
Hey, Nick,
I have to ask.
Nick, what was the second question?
The second question?
Yeah.
So, okay, so you'll have 5 minutes left. So we have like a state of mind or like, yeah. So you might think of like one of those qualities like patience or compassion that might be helpful when trying to go down this path or practice this vow.
That clear? Okay, thanks.
Second, they say that to myself.
So intentionally.
You know, it's easier to like actually get to that place. Like, if you were, they just, you know.
Yeah.
Try to settle in. I see that a lot.
Few things. Compassion. There.
Yeah.
Trying to.
You take about 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes.
Which one do I feel, you know, roach? Like, they want to pick up in that. They're there, you know. Like, into that. I'm just thinking we're gonna come up.
I think it's like, it's so dry outside. You're like, wow. I tried.
I agree. Go. Oh.
I know, and
So 1 more minute or so.
1 minute, folks.
It's true for everybody, really, because if something really neat, then you find out later in the reason why they're you, right? You need to. You kind of ask about it. I've been nasty people and I didn't really know till later came out and like, oh, like that really did come off totally wrong or whatever. Now I see, and
Since we saw it,
somebody else in there, you can take it out to somebody else. No. Pull all that and go to the dollar. It's funny if you watch yourself. Wow. That's like. My voice sound that. Oh, man. Oh.
Okay, it looks like people are coming back together. So, Jake, are you able to share the screen of that notepad and maybe bring the breakout room back in? Okay, so we're going to share our answers. So we can start with the first vow, countless beings we vow to free. So maybe the group that said, that had that one, sharing those 2 practical steps and then one like attitude that you have for that. And Jake can put it in the notepad.
3 seconds. Be good.
Okay.
So okay, first, my name is Alex. Um, we spoke about the attitudes of being intentional and humility. One thing I remember was that not making assumptions about what it means to other beings to be free or other people to be free. Know better than they do what that means to them. Thinking also about not making our own interests more important than the interests of these beings, which might be people, animals, could be even the environment. Or not. And that also let's talk about how the mindfulness teachings are related to these vows, because they guide us in how not to harm other beings. And I think that the word vow shows up in the mindfulness teachings quite a bit. So that's all I have. From the team. Not my own idea. Really good. From the team.
What are we doing? Okay.
So ours was ceaseless afflictions we vow to end. So the two ways we can incorporate that in our life is one, just making yourself of service to others, and going along with that, being mindful and aware of the afflictions that are going on, because sometimes we just zoom past life and we don't stop and really look around to see what's going on. And so just making yourself available to people, to animals. We talked about even, bugs, putting them back outside when they're in your home. And then the state of mind to be in, just a state of mind of compassion and love. That kind of puts you in a place where you can understand maybe why somebody is causing affliction or why the afflictions are happening.
Thanks for sharing. So Jake, do you want to just type in like the state of mind that they shared under the vow? So you had like love and compassion under that second one, and then I didn't really hear the first one. I mean, I heard parts of it. I can see the captions.
Love and compassion. Love. Alex,
It's
what?
fun to type with everyone watching.
Yeah. Intention and
Is that one of the afflictions?
intention and humility.
Humility. Okay, I like that.
Limitless truth for us, we vow to open. Yeah, for like practical steps, we talked about striving to be as honest as possible as often. And then we talked about kind of receiving other people's truths in a very open-minded way. So what that translates, it sort of goes to really the frame of mind. Like I said that first, I'm trying to get to the second practical step. So the frame of mind was like, actually it kind of echoes the first one, humility and open-mindedness, but also skepticism. So you don't blindly accept anything, but nor do you sort of dogmatically reject things that may not initially see. And so you're constantly questioning, like, what is true for me, what is true for the other, and recognizing we never really know. Absolute truth may not exist, and it's very difficult for us to know that with certainty. So that's where the humility comes in, of getting comfortable with not knowing, but also trying to be as honest as we can, and also be kind of as accepting as we can be of other people's truths, which may not always fully align with our minds. I'm sure Jake got all that.
That's good.
Awakening. All right. One of them was seeking the stone of light, and then help other people light as well. Also, about being curious, following steps. That would be part of it. Being willing to try new approaches.
Okay, thank you all for sharing. So I wanted to look at these for a second before we stop screen sharing. So we have intention and humility, love and compassion, striving for honesty, staying open-minded, remaining curious while also skeptical, and then seeking our own enlightenment while helping others, willing to try new approaches. So I hear a lot of like this intention of humility and not putting ourselves first necessarily, but like striving to understand as something that kind of connects all of these things. Guiding others, trying new approaches, staying open, creative, curious. So let's continue. So if you could stop screen sharing, that'd be great. Thank you also, Jake, for your typing skills on the fly. Appreciate that. So yes, so these vows and their practice, I think, can help us cultivate those states of mind that we talked about. So I wanted to touch on a few stories that I had for each of these vows. And I was just kind of reflecting on these as I went about my day, repeating these vows in my mind and seeing what came up naturally as a result. So for the first story, countless beings we vow to free. One story that comes up for me is a story written by Lauren Isley, and who was a anthropologist back in the 70s, 80s, and he was a fabulous writer. And he wrote this story called The Starfish Story. Many of you have probably heard this story before, or maybe not. And it's adapted from a book called The Star Thrower in one of his books. Again, this is by Lauren Isley. The story goes, once upon a time, there was a man who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking on the beach before he began his work. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he looked down the beach and saw a human figure moving like a dancer. He smiled to himself at the thought of someone who would dance to the day, so he walked faster to catch up. As he got closer, he noticed that the figure was that of a young man, and that what he was doing was not dancing at all. The young man was reaching down to the shore, picking up small objects and throwing them into the ocean. He came closer still and called out, "Good morning."
I'm doing
May I ask
okay.
what it is that you were doing?
I think tomorrow will be the day.
sorry. So he asked, "Good morning. May I ask what it is that you were doing?" The young man paused, looked up, and replied, "Throwing starfish into the ocean." "I must ask then, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" asked the somewhat startled wise man. To this, the young man replied, "The sun is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they'll die." Upon hearing this, the wise man commented, "But, young man, do you not realize that there are miles and miles of beach, and there are starfish all along every mile? You can't possibly make a difference." So here you see there's these countless beings, countless starfish on the shore, and the guy's coming up to him and saying, with his skepticism, "You can't possibly make a difference." At this, the young man bent down, picked up one more starfish, and threw it into the ocean. As it met the water, he said, "It made a difference for that one." So I like that story because it represents seeing the ceaseless beings, the countless beings, and still getting engaged. Like I said in my last talk, sometimes when we make the intention to help people, help beings, we then realize how many beings there are to help, how many people have suffered as a result of addiction, abuse, trauma, poverty. These things are almost limitless. If you tried to count how many people are suffering from these things, it's almost numberless. And still, we have to have that level of curiosity and openness and willingness to try to make a difference. Maybe that one starfish he threw into the ocean then went down to the bottom of the ocean and liberated a whole bunch of other starfish as well. You never know what one small step in the direction of helping others can take. And this story of the countless beings also reminded me of the just short kind of saying of the Buddha that this human birth, this human life is extremely, extremely precious. And the Buddha said that this human birth, to be born as a human being, is as rare as going out to the ocean and throwing a yoke into the ocean. And this yoke, this circle, is just floating around in the ocean. So being born as a human being is as rare as a turtle coming up from the bottom of the ocean and happening to put his head up through that yoke in the middle of the ocean that's floating around. So being born as a human being is an extremely rare occasion. And one way that we can make the most of being a human being is working on serving those countless beings, working on benefiting countless beings. So a second story, so for the second part, ceaseless afflictions we vow to end. When I thought about that, I was reminded of another story that I'd read about a man who was practicing meditation for the first time. And before practicing meditation, he had experienced chronic pain in his jaw. And so he'd been to many doctors and sought a lot of treatments, and they helped to varying degrees, but they still didn't really alleviate the pain. So he went into this rather intense meditation retreat. I think it was one of the 10-day retreats where you meditate most of all day. And he started meditating, and he gradually brought his attention and awareness to the pain. Before, he had just simply sought a remedy and a fix to the pain. But this time, he really actually brought his attention to the pain and started watching it. And he noticed that it wasn't as intense as he thought it was. And as he brought his attention to it, he noticed that it changed and transformed and eventually just dissipated on its own. And so I think that represents the practice of mindfulness as we have these ceaseless afflictions, we have pain, we have sorrows, we have sufferings. And if we can bring our mindfulness, our awareness, our attention to those pains, they can maybe dissipate or calm, or we can experience that release of tension and relaxation. So practicing the path of mindfulness can help us to cope and to manage these ceaseless afflictions. So for the third one, limitless Dharma doors, I limitless Dharma doors we vow to open. In this, I'm reminded of a scene from the movie Mad Men, in which Roger Sterling, he's one of the CEOs in this advertising company. He's made it very far in his life. He's accumulated a lot of power and wealth and fame and money. And he's talking to his psychiatrist and saying, "Doc, I keep going along and opening these doors, and the doors keep leading to nothing. They keep leading to emptiness." And he's saying that in a tone of despair. And he's saying that from a place of ego where he's expecting more gratification, more pleasure. But when you look at it from a Buddhist point of view, when we're opening doors, a Dharma door is everything. So a Dharma means just a phenomena. So a Dharma could be the sense of taste, or a sense of sight, or a sense of hearing, or a sense of touch. And when we look deeply into those Dharma doors, we see that those phenomena are empty in and of themselves. And then Thich Nhat Hanh says, empty of what? They're empty of a separate self. They're empty of a separate self. So everything is interdependent on everything else. And whenever we open one Dharma door, we see into its emptiness, and we see that it's dependent on other things. So I, Nick, am empty in the sense that I couldn't exist without the food that makes me up. The food that couldn't exist without Mother Earth and the rain and the sun. So I'm made up of the clouds and the sun and the rain and my parents and my grandparents and everyone who's influenced my life in some way. If you look into me, Nick, you'll see that this concept of Nick as a separate self is empty. And if you look deeper, you can see all of these components that make up Nick. And even those components, if you look even more deeply, those things are empty because they're made up of other things. So that is the Dharma door that helps us see into the nature of reality, that interbeing emptiness nature. And so we have the fourth understanding, the fourth vow, which is the highest path of awakening, or the deepest path of awakening. It can be said either way. We vow to realize. And what comes up for me in that is something that was shared recently in our Sangha, which is the Heart Sutra. And that is the insight that brings us to the other shore. And I touched on this briefly, but it's basically that. So quoting from the Heart Sutra, this body itself is emptiness, and emptiness is this body. This body is not other than emptiness, and emptiness is not other than this body. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. All phenomena bear the mark of emptiness. Their true nature is the nature of no birth, no death, no being, no non-being, no defilement, no purity, no increasing, no decreasing. I think if you take skepticism to its furthest, you end up seeing through things. You're able to see through things that appear to be so, but they're not actually so. And in Buddhism, this is known as the Great Doubt. The Great Doubt is where we start to doubt and question everything, and we start to see into the emptiness and interconnected nature of all phenomena. And so if you want to look up the Heart Sutra, you can read it yourself, but it also closes where it says that it should be known that the insight that brings us to the other shore, this Heart Sutra, is a great mantra, the most illuminating mantra, the highest mantra, a mantra beyond compare, the true wisdom that has the power to put an end to all kinds of suffering. Therefore, let us proclaim this mantra to praise the insight that brings us to the other shore. And then it closes, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Svaha. So we talk about the deepest path of awakening, or the highest path of awakening. And in the Heart Sutra, we see this is the highest, the most illuminating mantra. The most illuminating, highest realization is the one that says that phenomena are empty of a separate self and interconnected. And the more we meditate and focus on that, the more that we can see that we are one with the universe, we're one with all beings. And whenever we try to help one being, that's really helping countless beings. Whenever we genuinely try to soothe or end one affliction, we can really see that we're soothing many afflictions. You can even ask, how many people has Thich Nhat Hanh helped in his life? In reality, if you were to contemplate that, that's really a numberless set of beings, or not even in his life. How many people has Thich Nhat Hanh helped? Well, you can count right here in this moment. Thich Nhat Hanh's helping people in terms of this practice is something that we all practice together, and it extends beyond what Thich Nhat Hanh's life was. You can ask the same of Brother Chi Sing. How many people has Brother Chi Sing helped? Well, if you're coming to the Dallas Meditation Center, Brother Chi Sing is still helping in this moment, in this day. You can ask the same of each one of you as you sit on your meditation cushion. How many people have you helped? How many afflictions are you putting an end to? In reality, that is numberless. And so as we continue to practice, we can be more comfortable with that sense of numberlessness, of ceaselessness, of the vast infinite light that exists in this practice. And that's something that kind of unfolds as we continue to live our lives and practice this way of awakening. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for contributing the bulk of this Dharma talk as well. I really appreciate your insights and your discussions. I learned a lot from you all as well. So we have a few minutes left, so I'll go ahead and open. Maybe we have time for a couple of shares. Thank you all for listening. I'll go ahead and bow out.